What happens when one of the most influential billionaires in history disappears into the shadows of a city built on secrets? Long before the era of corporate mega-resorts, Las Vegas was a different beast, a gritty, neon-soaked playground for the mob. It was a town of backroom handshakes and skimmed suitcases of cash, a place where the underworld ran the show, and the law was paid to look the other way. Everyone thought they knew who held the keys to the strip, until a man of strange aura arrived to seize them. Howard Hughes, aviator, filmmaker, billionaire. By the 1960s, he wasn't just wealthy, he was untouchable. He didn't just move to Las Vegas, he haunted it. But behind the curtain of his massive wealth lay a shattering, hidden condition that turned his quest for power into an obsession. Then came one fateful New Year's Eve, a night where the lights stayed on, but the power shifted forever. Hughes found himself at the center of a scandal that didn't just make headlines, it rewired the city's DNA. What really happened that night? And how did one man hijack the soul of Las Vegas and rebuild it in his own image? When we talk about Howard Hughes, we're talking about a man whose wealth and influence were almost legendary. By the early 1960s, he wasn't just a Hollywood producer or a daring aviator, he was a full-blown business powerhouse. He founded and ran a string of companies that made him one of the richest and most powerful men in the world. There was Hughes Aircraft Company, founded in 1932, a leader in aviation and electronics, building aircraft and missile systems. Then came Hughes Tool Company, which he inherited. It made oil drilling equipment, and its successor is still around today as Baker Hughes. He also owned Hughes Air West, a regional airline, and had a big Hollywood footprint too, buying a controlling interest and later full ownership of RKO Pictures before selling it in 1955. And then, in November 1966, Hughes arrived in Las Vegas, and he didn't waste a second. Over the next few years, he went on a buying spree that shook the city, snapping up the Sands, the Frontier, and the Castaways. But Hughes wasn't just driven by business. He was also dealing with a mental condition that pushed him toward an obsession with control. How exactly did it influence his decisions, and how did it help trigger the scandal that changed the city forever? That's what we're about to find out next. So, before we get to the scandal itself, we need to talk about something that played a huge role in everything Howard Hughes did: his mind. Now, Hughes was never officially diagnosed during his lifetime, but biographers and mental health experts agree on one thing. He was dealing with severe obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD, and probably other conditions like paranoia and symptoms consistent with personality or schizoaffective disorders. And all of this only grew worse as he got older. His OCD wasn't just about being neat or organized. This was a deep, overwhelming fear of contamination, something that started in childhood when his mother drilled into him the dangers of germs. As an adult, this fear took over every part of his life. Staff had to follow strict rituals for the simplest tasks. Opening a can of peaches? That came with a full manual. His employees followed every rule he created, even the bizarre ones, because Hughes had the money and power to make them do it. And because no one could push back, his compulsions grew into a world he controlled completely. He locked himself away in dark, sealed hotel rooms for months, and later, for years. As his isolation grew, so did the paranoia. He trusted only a tiny circle of aides. He repeated sentences over and over again. His need for perfection, which once fueled his success as an aviator and filmmaker, became a compulsion that slowed everything he touched. Some staff whispered that he was going insane. The FBI even described him as a screwball paranoiac in the 1950s. But despite the concerns, no one could force treatment on him. He was too wealthy, too powerful, and too isolated to intervene. Howard Hughes' undiagnosed mental condition drove him to an extreme, obsessive lifestyle, and it was this very lifestyle that would soon spark a scandal no one could have predicted. And it all started the moment he checked in at the Desert Inn in Las Vegas. It all started on Thanksgiving Day, 1966. Howard Hughes arrived in Las Vegas, but not by plane like most billionaires. Nope, he came in secret aboard his private train all the way from Boston. Carried in on a stretcher, he was installed in the top 2 floors of the Desert Inn, entire penthouse suites all to himself. He was only supposed to stay for 10 days, but he ended up staying through the end of the year. And as New Year's Eve approached, hotel management, led by Mo Dalitz, needed the penthouse for the holiday crowds. They politely asked Hughes to leave, and that's when things got really interesting. Instead of packing up, Hughes, through his aides, did something nobody expected. He bought the Desert Inn for $13.2 million. That's over $100 million in today's money. By the way, I'm Cypher Karand. I tell the stories the ultra-wealthy would rather keep hidden, from the bizarre habits of the world's elite to their dark financial secrets. If you're interested in the truth behind the fortunes of billionaires and high society, hit that subscribe button. Anyway, back to Howard Hughes. The news made headlines immediately. At a time when Las Vegas was still known as a mob-infested playground, casinos, showgirls, and secret money skimming happening behind the scenes, suddenly, one of the world's richest men was investing serious capital. But Hughes didn't just buy the Desert Inn and call it a night. He moved into the penthouse and pulled the curtains shut, beginning a silent, invisible war for control. What happened over the next few years wasn't just a business expansion. It was a hostile takeover of the city's very soul, and the mob never even saw him coming. For the next 4 years, the Desert Inn was more than just a home for Howard Hughes. It was his very own headquarters. From that suite, and with a tight circle of trusted aides, Hughes ran a real estate empire that would eventually dominate a large swath of the Strip and surrounding Nevada land. Over the next few years, he went on a buying spree, snapping up the Sands, the Frontier, the Castaways, the Silver Slipper, the Landmark, and more. At one point, he controlled a huge chunk of the Strip, becoming the largest single property owner in Nevada, with dozens of casinos, hotels, and thousands of acres of land. What his takeover did for Las Vegas was massive. Those old mob-controlled casinos, they were slowly being replaced by corporate-owned resorts, real investments backed by serious money. Professional management and institutional investors started moving in. Suddenly, the Strip wasn't just bright lights and shady deals anymore. It was credible, modern, and ready for big business. But while the city was changing, Hughes himself was retreating further into his own world. Behind the penthouse doors, his obsessive routines, isolation, and growing paranoia were quietly taking over, setting the stage for a period of life even stranger and more shocking than anyone on the Strip could have imagined. When Hughes shut the doors of his penthouse suite, the world around it kept moving, but inside, everything collapsed. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, Hughes had truly succumbed to his disorders. His anti-germ routines, his fear of contamination, and his obsession with control morphed into self-neglect and near-complete isolation. He rarely bathed, stopped cutting his hair or nails, and often refused even basic hygiene, even while demanding his hotel staff follow elaborate cleaning rituals for everything around him. Meanwhile, chronic pain from past injuries, especially a near-fatal plane crash in 1946, forced him into heavy use of painkillers like codeine and tranquilizers. That drug abuse compounded his mental decline. By the time he quietly left the Desert Inn on Thanksgiving Day, 1970, carried on a stretcher and flown away on a private jet, Hughes was dying a slow death. So what became of the Desert Inn after Hughes exited the stage? The hotel carried on, but the golden era was fading. The property remained part of his empire for years under his holding company, but as Las Vegas evolved, new mega-resorts and bigger corporate players entered the game. Eventually, the Desert Inn couldn't keep up. It closed its doors on August 28, 2000, after more than 50 years of operation. Not long after, the old buildings were demolished to make way for new developments. The classic Desert Inn was gone, a casualty of Vegas's relentless drive toward modern glitz. As for Hughes, his decline culminated in a grim final chapter. On April 5, 1976, at age 70, he died aboard a plane en route to Houston for medical treatment. Officially, it was kidney failure, but by then he was emaciated, dehydrated, and addicted. It was a tragic end for a man who once towered over Las Vegas, but while his body faded, the transformation he sparked lived on. Corporate casinos, mega resorts, and a Las Vegas reborn for a new era. Beyond the drama, the eccentricities, and the scandal, Hughes' story holds some surprising lessons about money, power, and business strategy. That's what we will uncover next. So, what can we actually learn from Howard Hughes' wild takeover of Las Vegas? Beyond the shocking headlines and the mystery of his penthouse fortress, there are 5 powerful lessons in business and life. First, one bold move can rewrite your entire future. Hughes' purchase of the Desert Inn looked like a frantic whim to avoid being evicted, but it was actually a masterstroke of leverage. By dropping $13.2 million on a single hotel, he transformed himself from a temporary guest into a permanent titan. It proves that a single decisive act can create the foundation for an entire empire. This led directly to his second lesson. Consolidation is the key to true power. Hughes didn't stop at one hotel. He methodically snapped up the Sands, the Frontier, and the Castaways until he controlled a massive chunk of the Strip. He didn't just own buildings, he owned the ecosystem, proving that when you control the market, you don't just follow the rules, you make them. Third, Hughes taught us that legitimacy is a competitive advantage. By replacing skimmed suitcases of cash and shady backroom deals with corporate structure and professional management, he turned a mob-run playground into a credible destination for big-money investors. He saw that for Las Vegas to grow, it had to step out of the shadows and into the light of mainstream business. This required vision and timing, the fourth lesson. Hughes recognized the Strip's potential to become a global entertainment hub long before the rest of the world. He moved while others were still looking the other way, proving that success often belongs to the one who spots the trend before it becomes the norm. Finally, his story ends as a haunting cautionary tale about the cost of obsession. While his brilliance built an empire, his refusal to seek balance led to a tragic decline behind sealed doors. It's a stark reminder that no matter how much wealth you accumulate, the most important asset you can ever manage is your own well-being. Howard Hughes changed the DNA of Las Vegas forever, but in the process, he became a prisoner of the very empire he created. So what do you think? Was Howard Hughes a visionary who genuinely transformed Las Vegas, or a man who turned his disorder into an advantage to dominate the Strip? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's quirkiest billionaires, hit that subscribe button. I'll be sharing more content about billionaire life stories, their wild lifestyles, and the surprising lessons we can learn from their fortunes. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.